Thank you for that very kind introduction. And as it was this morning, it's amazing to hear the graduates speak and to listen to their stories and hear their poise and their grace. Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I have to say, give a couple of quick fashion shout-outs before I start, if I may. First of all, the way some of you have styled these caps, I mean, you're on a boat, okay? And also, I feel I have to say, I have not seen this many people rock froze since the 70s, okay? And let me say, that's not just respect. That's, you threw it on the ground, okay? That's also, you're saying to people, I threw it on the ground, you got to pick it up and give it to me. Wow. Hello. And thank you for inviting me to address the 2017 graduating class of the Savannah College of Art and Design. And congratulations to the graduates. Today marks a completion, in a way, of one phase of your lives. And as you move into a new phase of your lives, I hope that all the work and the effort and experience that has gone into your receiving your diplomas today will serve you in good stead as you apply yourselves in your chosen fields in the years to come. And we'll just stop there and I'll say, I know what you're thinking, because when we hear that SCAD has a 98% employment rate, you're looking up here and thinking, yeah, but you're in the 2%. I also would like to say congratulations to the professors, instructors, and administrators. I trust that you have a passion and an aptitude for educating young people, and may that ever be the case. I hope you realize your importance to this class graduating today and your importance to past and future classes. Simply put, great educators change lives. Lastly, I would like to congratulate the parents who are here today. I can well imagine the emotions you're feeling, the pride, the joy, the relief. I'm sure many of you made a great sacrifice to make this day possible, and I'm sure you'd do it again in an instant. I'd also like to acknowledge the importance of several people who have helped make this day possible. Paula Wallace, the SCAD founder and president, and the SCAD board of trustees. I am not the first person I would think of to deliver a commencement address. I don't give advice as a rule. I'm not a comedian, nor a politician, nor a visionary businessman, nor an inventor. I am acquainted with the Savannah College of Art and Design, as I've had a house in Lacoste, France for many years, where I've occasionally encountered students while walking in the village, where I must say I've never seen a single one of them handcuffed. At least by the police. So I want to assure you, parents who send your children to Lacoste, that you can absolutely be certain that if they happen to find themselves in any sort of difficulty over there, they are more than welcome to come down in the valley and knock on my door, and I'll be like, get out of here. This is like private property. I was once asked to participate in a conversation with SCAD students in fashion design in the neighboring megalopolis of Lumière, a conversation I was very happy to have. By the way, you've done an exemplary job of restoring the Maison Basse in the valley, and if the university ever feels it needs another farm in the valley, please don't hesitate to make me an offer 4 or 5 times the market value. Thank you. As some of you may know, I am an actor in both theater and film, a director principally in theater, but occasionally in film, and a producer in films and theater. And for the better part of the last 15 years, I've also worked as a fashion designer doing a men's line. This is my third fashion company. The first was called Uncle Kimono, and the second was called Techno Bohemian, and the third one, at the insistence of my new partners, carries my name. And I've been asked to speak to you today about my experiences, and I hope in doing so you'll find something useful in my hopefully blessedly brief remarks. I wonder how many of you are nervous today, unsure of your next step, fearful of what tomorrow will bring, doubtful of your talents, uncertain of your preparedness, dubious about your prospects. When I was your age, I wasn't at all sure of the path I had chosen. I decided to join with some kids I had gone to college with and to move to Chicago and start a theater company. And part of me, perhaps the bigger part of me, was quite certain that this effort was doomed to fail. And I suppose it's time for me to finally admit that once again I was wrong, as over 40 years after its founding in 1976, Steppenwolf Theater continues to flourish. Now, I'm not, by the way, encouraging any of you to go out and start your own theater. Should you feel that urge, don't hesitate to contact me. I can recommend a good psychiatrist and a treatment program. Now, how did our theater survive? What is the secret? Why did we succeed? Luck, persistence, stubbornness, talent, confidence, training, insanity. Here's what I would posit. I believe that our endeavor succeeded because we fell in love with our work, because we had a genuine respect for each other's talent and a genuine interest in watching that talent develop. The relationships we had forged and the education we had received at university laid the foundation for our endurance and eventually for our success. For those of you receiving your degrees today, my wish for you is that you find somewhere the sense of community, the same singularity of purpose, the same sense of working towards a common goal, and the same forum for self-expression. I can't imagine what shape my life would have taken had I not met my colleagues at university. They were and remain the most important influences in my working life. Many years ago, I was working on a film called The Sheltering Sky, which was based on the novel written by a writer called Paul Bowles. At that time, Mr. Bowles was 70 years old, and he had lived in Morocco for the past 30 years by then. One night at dinner, I asked him when it was that he had realized he wasn't going to be returning to live in America. And he looked at me somewhat aghast and responded, "I'm still thinking about it." I suppose that's the way I felt about becoming a professional actor until I was in my mid-30s. And probably it was not purely chance that the first film I developed as a producer was called The Accidental Tourist. In some sense, the title seemed a metaphor for my career choice. Maybe one can never be sure if the path one has chosen is the best one, the one most suited to one's temperament and talents and dreams. The point I'm making is simply that it's normal to question yourselves. It's normal to be apprehensive at times. It's normal to question your goals, and yes, even your aptitudes. But you'll survive that self-examination. And even if it's only the first of many self-examinations, and be the stronger for it. I suppose that all generations believe themselves to live in extraordinary times, times which present unique challenges and complexities. The time we're living in now is no different in that respect. Certainly, the world has changed over the last 50 years at an absolutely dizzying pace. And it doesn't seem likely to slow down anytime soon. I hope that you can deal with that pace and that you still have the time to slow down, to tune out if need be, and to turn off when you choose to. Perhaps one of you will design an app to separate real news from fake, though you might want to hurry up on that. As we seem to have some need of it more or less urgently. Of course, perhaps it wouldn't matter anyway, for as Paul Simon wrote in his song called The Boxer long before any of you were born, a man hears what he wants to hear and disregards the rest. And I think we should all hope that that doesn't describe us also. I'll take a brief moment now to address those graduates in these creative disciplines in which I've spent my working life. For theater and film and writing students, here's what I've used to remind me of what I do. But I think it could easily apply to any artistic endeavor. In 1949, the novelist William Faulkner won the Nobel Prize for literature, and at the banquet he gave a brief address about writing, partially in the hopes of correcting the notion that he was a pessimistic writer. I carried that text around with me for years and eventually memorized it. And I always thought of this speech as the ideal expression of the importance of great writing and also about creativity in general and what our goals should be, even if we never reach them. In part, Faulkner said, "The young man or woman writing today has forgotten the problems of the human heart in conflict with itself, which alone can make good writing because that alone is worth writing about, worth the agony and the sweat. He must learn them again. He must teach himself that the basest of all things is to be afraid, and teaching himself that, forget it forever, leaving no room in his workshop for anything but the old verities and truths of the heart, the old universal truths lacking which any story is ephemeral and doomed: love, honor, pity, pride, compassion, and sacrifice. Until he does so, he will labor under a curse. He writes not of love, but of lust, of defeats in which nobody loses anything of value, of victories without hope, and worst of all, without pity or compassion. His griefs grieve on no universal bones, leaving no scars. He writes not of the heart, but of the glands." The writing, the storytelling, is the most important element, as was mentioned earlier. Always. Nothing else is even close. I compare the theater to surfing. At a certain point, you paddle out on your board and you turn your back to the sun maybe and you wait for a wave. But you, the actor, the performer, you're not the wave. The wave is caused by the collision between the material and the public. Your job is to ride the wave. Sometimes you ride it to the shore, sometimes you fall off in good material or great material such as Faulkner wrote and described so eloquently. There will always be a wave. Trust that. Wait for it. Ride it when it comes. Work hard. Be prepared. Challenge yourselves always. Extend your range. Be a valued collaborator. Take and learn from criticism. Try and make what you do better every time you do it. And yes, learn to deal with failure. I wouldn't necessarily say accept it, but deal with it. And understand it will happen. And though failure may be your enemy, it may feel at times even like you're a constant companion, but it can also be your teacher. I am curious to see what will become of the world of cinema, where I've spent so much, a big part of my life. When I started doing movies over 30 years ago, the studio system was king, and if you were fortunate enough to become an actor or director of note, it was very likely that you received a, quote, development deal at a studio. You were given an office at Warner Brothers or Columbia or Paramount or United Artists. You hired a secretary of your choice and a development person or two, and the studio paid your expenses and wrote the checks for the options on the books you wanted to adapt, or the magazine articles you hoped to turn into a movie script, or on the original ideas you wanted to explore. They paid to hire a screenwriter and funded the various drafts of the script and eventually funded the film itself if they felt it had some chance for commercial success. That system no longer exists. It has been more or less obliterated in 20 short years. I noticed the other day a headline which stated that the past Memorial Day was the worst Memorial Day weekend in terms of box office in 19 years. So I wonder what the business will be or not be in 5 years or 10. Will there be a new model for distribution, for financing? Will piracy be halted? Will technology make films quicker to shoot, less expensive and cumbersome to produce? When I was your age, if one wanted to see a film, you had to go to a cinema. It was nothing to think of driving 100 miles to see a film. Then came the VHS tape, and then the DVD, then on demand and live streaming, etc. It's not at all clear to me at this point that movie theaters will even exist in 10 years. At the mall where we go to the grocery store, there's a Cineplex. If there is a Star Wars movie of some sort playing, the parking lot is full. If there isn't, it's kind of empty these days. Tastes change, viewing habits change, delivery systems change. 6 or 7 years ago, I was at a premiere in Los Angeles of a film that I had acted in called Red. And the morning after the premiere, I flew to China for a fashion event at the store in Shanghai where the event was being held. A young woman told me that her husband had really liked the film, Red. And as the premiere had only been the night before in Los Angeles, and in fact the actual opening of the film wasn't for a week or 10 days later, I assumed that he must have been at the showing in Hollywood and asked her, oh, does your husband live in Los Angeles, or was he just working out there or visiting? And she looked at me like I was absolutely clueless and said, oh no, he saw it on the web. So as you can imagine, it would appear there are some kinks to work out in that particular business model. So get to it. Good luck with that. I, for one, am eager to see what your generation invents, reinvents, explores, discovers, and rediscovers. I would be remiss if I didn't speak for a brief moment to the fashion students here today. You are going into a tough field at a tough time, but a beautiful field as well. In 2009, I traveled from where my line was headquartered and produced at that time, which was in Prato, Italy, to New York City, where I was meant to show it to the buyer from Barney's and the buyer from Bergdorf's, and I think maybe opening ceremony, and I don't remember who else. However, my entire collection was confiscated at JFK. because I made the mistake of answering the customs declaration form question, "Are you carrying samples?" in the affirmative. So it took me a few days to get it out of customs, and therefore caused me to cancel all my buyer appointments. So basically a catastrophe. So I know I said earlier that I don't give advice, and I generally don't, but I have to say this. When you fill out that little customs form and it asks if you're carrying samples on the flight, just say no, as Nancy Reagan so helpfully suggested all those years ago, okay? Good. Nevertheless, once I got my line out of customs, a few people did wander by to see it, some stores and others who work in the media end of fashion as well. One young man called Matt Tiernauer was one of the visitors. He had directed a beautiful film that I'd seen the year before, a documentary about the fashion designer Valentino. And that film can tell you more than I ever could about the fashion world. So if you haven't seen it, you definitely should. At any rate, he went through my collection very carefully and for a good long while, and then he walked over to me and after complimenting me on the collection said, may I make one observation? And I said, sure, man, of course, yeah. And he said, I see you've actually managed to find a business more toxic than the movie business. And I said, gee, Matt, I'd like to think so. I mean, otherwise, what would be the point? But seriously, toxicity aside, to have the opportunity to live a creative life, to have even the possibility of that opportunity to live a creative life is a precious gift. Yes, the gift may come at a price, because there is often, if not always, a price for doing what you want in this life. But the rewards far outweigh the obstacles. So graduates, I leave you with that one. You'll find your way, I did, and have more or less lived to tell the tale. And I sincerely doubt I was half as clever or talented or prepared as you are today. I wish you my best. Godspeed.